Hello everybody, this is Fernando for the latest Mafia and Gangsters video. Alright, let's go ahead and let's do another video here. In this case, another set of encounters that people have had with mafioso gangsters. I've already done two of these, and while they've gotten so-so views, I get the impression that it just needs more traction. So maybe some more consistency, more videos that'll produce eventually some more views, and then people will be able to see more of these afterwards. Who knows? I may still continue these afterwards. But in this case, it involves three set of encounters that people have had with the mafia. Some of them are actually pretty short and sweet, but still containing some pretty good relevant information. And I'll give my own thoughts on each story afterward. So the first one comes from a user by the name of Peret Kivi. And here's essentially what they have to state about their encounter. So 20 plus years ago, I once talked with a real gangster. He was supposedly a very powerful man in the crime world. Back then, I was very surprised because he was very polite and nice to me. I was just a humble person serving him. Many people talk down to customer service agents. He didn't. I remember my colleagues were afraid of him and asked me to talk to him. What can I say? I suppose when people are off duty, then people are off duty. Maybe gangsters enjoy being nice during their free time as it balances things out for them. Then that's it. That's everything that they had to state within their two short paragraphs. But still, some good info to talk about. So, Paret Kivi notes something that I've mentioned or I've actually heard about before in the world of the mafia, and that's the fact that they are considered nice people. Like they're nice to other people in their community, or in this case, other people that are serving them. Customer service agents, I don't know exactly what that means, like when it comes to the profession that that person was working with. Who knows, maybe they were in the phone departments, or maybe they were in furniture or something along those lines. Like they clearly had this mafioso gangster looking guy all of a sudden in their retail shop. And then while others didn't want to serve him because they were intimidated by him, here Parekkivi did so and then realized just how nice they were. I've read about that before. I even talked about that in some of my encounters videos here as well. It is true. Like it seems like when they're not on duty, then they're essentially just everyday people. It's always good to be, and you get better results being nice. And that's essentially what it seems like here when it comes to this unnamed powerful man in the crime world. I wish they would have mentioned who that was, but still, at least that's some info there. Now, the next one comes from a user by the name of KJ Wachowski, and here's what they have to state on their encounter. While living in a big town in southern Connecticut, one night while getting drunk at my favorite pub, I got the bright idea to ask a mobster for a quote-unquote job. How did I know he was a mobster? Well, I was told this. He looked apart, but only in the sense that he was a big Italian dude. And so while I drunkenly asked him for employment, he looked at me rather bemused and then sort of just shrugged his shoulders. In that instant, a friend who also worked at the pub pulled me aside, put me outside in a fenced-off patio area, brought me a beer, and told me very seriously to never talk to that guy again. So I either dodged a bullet or a beating or obviously nothing that night. For those familiar in Connecticut, yes, there is mafia all around in everything. And then that's it. That's everything that that user KJ Wachowski mentioned on their encounter. So in this case, how about that? Connecticut does have mafiosos there, gangsters in other words, that apparently like to frequent those pubs too. I was just imagining all of this in my head, how this guy, probably like something straight out of The Godfather, maybe even like Luca Brasi and so on, probably saw this dude, like a drunk dude, realizing that he's drunk and not, being able to control himself, being up there next to him, asking him for a job. And that was probably like the thing that made him laugh internally that day. Like, is this dude serious? Did he just ask me for that? But then realizing, he can't really take it too far because he's drunk, and it's rather just, good to just leave him alone at that point. I think he really did dodge beating or something like that there, because in most other situations, you've read about some of those encounters, especially with famous individuals like Tommy DeSimone, anyone that even dares insult them, that's when they take things to a whole other level. But this guy, he obviously had the wherewithal to realize, it's just a drunk guy. I'm not going to create any fuss about this. Just gave that classic shrug, brushed it off, and then obviously the other friend realized the true situation and then put him back in the back area to make sure to never ever talk to him again. So interesting stuff. I would love to have seen who that mafioso guy was as well. And it kind of ties into the first story where people like in the mafia are just acting normal when it comes to most situations where they're off duty. Now the last entry comes from a woman by the name of Valerie Lennox. It's a little bit longer, but here's essentially what they have to state. She said, maybe, in terms of, encountering the mafia, as a young reporter 35 years ago, I had an experience involving something. It certainly felt like it might have been. So I was working for a community newspaper in a small waterfront town that was a tourism draw. A developer showed up with plans to build a resort. Yes, he was Italian, specifically Sicilian. I later learned because he offered to take me on a trip there. Now, the project was a bit sketchy, and there were issues with zoning and the town's sewage water capacity for the project. So I interviewed the developer, I'll call him Pete, by phone, and then wrote a story, including less than enthused comments from the town planner and mayor. And so this developer called and invited me to an in-person interview in the nearest large city. It was a big local story, so I agreed. I now cringe a bit at this, but I was very young and it was a more innocent time. I ended up in his car going to his office to see the plans for the resort. He opened the conversation by remarking that he was disappointed in the story that I'd written, coincidentally locking the car doors at the same time. Really? So I trotted out my innocent, slightly dumb ingenuity act, which is pretty easy to achieve when only 5 feet tall, 20 years old, but typically looking half a decade younger. And so we went to his office, which was very low-key and bare and empty, and I looked at the resort drawings. They were a bit sketchy, but it was an initial draft. I did an interview to get more details of the project. He declined to pose for a photo with his drawings, but he let me take a photo of the drawings themselves. I tried to quick snap a photo of him, but he got a hand in front of his face very quickly. During the interview, he wanted to know if I was interested in a potential well-paid job on a newspaper he was starting, and he wanted to know if I would like to accompany him as a photographer on a family trip to Sicily. So I wrote the story but left out the incidents that made me feel like I landed in a trailer for The Godfather. I just stuck to the basic facts and the town concerns involving municipal services for the project, and my complete notes and photos migrated to the RCMP, who apparently had some interest. The project quickly failed since the property wasn't serviced for that level of development, and I think the council voted against rezoning. Then that's it. That's everything that this user, Valerie Lennox, stated with their encounter. So interesting stuff. First off, it looks like this was in Canada, if I'm not mistaken. The RCMP has to do with the Royal Canadian Mountain Police, right? And then also the information that she was stating shows her title as an award-winning Canadian journalist. So who knew that there's apparently mafioso and gangsters up in Canada as well? And then how about that? Apparently mafiosos and others are into developing other types of businesses. Like in this case, it involves something involving zoning and then trying to make sure that whatever it was that they were developer, in this case the resort, had the proper sewage and water capacity and the zoning rights for it. So here she was trying to do the interview, maybe giving a little bit of a skeptical the negatory comments on there. And then that's, of course, where it took things to a whole other level when all of a sudden the in-person interview involved him locking the car doors, taking her over to his office, quote unquote, which I could easily picture as another bare bones office. I've read about that too before. how there's almost like shell companies that are set up, quick ones, in other words, in retail outlets that just have the barest minimum on there to at least show some legitimacy of sorts. And then here he was showcasing the pictures or the drawings associated with that resort and then trying to get it passed. Interesting too. She had some bravery in her whenever she was trying to quickly take that picture from him or of him. I'm guessing using a disposable camera or something else that she had with him, and obviously he blocked it at that point. So talk about that. If you were trying to do that with any other mafioso gangster, I mean, talk about a risk if he clearly didn't want to have any pictures taken. But yeah, otherwise that was her experience, and I like how she quickly notated that eventually it just didn't pass. There just wasn't the level needed in order to make sure, and the rezoning needed to make sure that it would be approved. And so who knows where that mafioso gangster went afterward, but he was obviously disappointed in the beginning, not just with the story that she had written, but it looks like with the attempts afterward, with the council voting against it. So, but that's pretty much it. Those are the 3 short but sweet stories associated with more mafioso gangster encounters. Let me know what you guys think. If you want me to do more of these, then I'll definitely be able to do some in the future, and then maybe start taking some suggestions on these too. All right, everybody. Thanks again as always. Take care.